Besides experimenting with his clever and unusual inventions, he spent a lot of time reading. For him, reading was more than acquiring knowledge, it was self improvement. Now, you already know the version of Franklin on your $100 bill, the powdered wig, the wise aphorisms. But that image on the currency bill doesn't tell the complete story of Benjamin Franklin. It leaves out the man who shocked himself trying to electrocute a turkey, or the man who sat naked in front of open windows every morning for his health, or the man who wrote a formal essay addressed to the Royal Academy of Science about the science of farting. This is the real Benjamin Franklin, and the real one is oddly interesting. Benjamin Franklin was born in Boston in 1706. He was one of 17 children. In a family whose business was soap making and candles, his parents could only afford to send him to school for 2 years. After that, by age 10, he was working alongside his father. By 12, he was a printer apprentice at his brother James' shop. Most people would have accepted that shape of their life. However, Franklin was a self-starter and began to teach himself several things. He would spend the little money that he had earned on books. Frequently, he skipped meals to buy them. He would read essays, set books aside, and then try to rewrite them from memory, not to copy them, but to train his mind for just learning and problem solving. This was a boy at the time who essentially was building his own university out of secondhand books and sheer determination. And almost from the very beginning, Benjamin Franklin could not stop inventing things. A pair of wooden swim fins, not for his feet, but for his hands. They were two oval paddles, about 10 inches long and 6 inches wide, with a hole cut out for his thumb so he could grip them in his palms. He would use them to propel himself through the water faster. He also tried foot fins, but as he would later admit that they didn't work out that well. This is the same boy who, on another swimming trip, attached a kite string to himself and let the wind drag him across a pond, which he later described as giving him the greatest pleasure imaginable. He was kite surfing in early 18th century entirely by accident because he was always thinking of creative things to do with kites and other things. That's when the inventions really began to take off. There was the Franklin stove in 1742. Franklin was fed up with Pennsylvania winters and the way traditional fireplaces would fill the room with smoke, with barely providing any heat. So Franklin designed a freestanding metal fireplace that stood a few inches from the chimney wall. A hollow baffle at the rear pulled air in and mixed it with the heat more efficiently, therefore providing less smoke, more warmth, and less wood required. Also, Benjamin Franklin invented bifocals. Franklin was both nearsighted and farsighted, and he was sick of carrying two pairs of glasses everywhere. His solution was to cut the lenses from both pairs in half horizontally and fuse them into a single frame. Distance vision was on top, reading vision was on bottom. His bifocal invention came about from simply being annoyed. There was the flexible catheter that he invented in 1752 when his brother John was suffering terribly from kidney stones, and the only available catheters were rigid metal tubes. So Franklin designed a flexible version built from small hinged segments that he had a silversmith fabricate, and he mailed it to his brother. There was also the wonderful glass Armonica. This one invention was one of Franklin's personal favorites. It was strangely beautiful. He saw a performer play music by running wet fingers around the rims of wine glasses, the classic trick that makes those ringing tones. And so he thought, could this become a real instrument? Well, he commissioned a London glassblower to build him 37 glass bowls of different sizes and pitches, mounted them together on a horizontal iron spindle controlled by a foot pedal, and he played them with wet fingers as they spun. The result was an amazing sound that captivated 18th century Europe. Mozart wrote music for it, and so did Beethoven and others. Franklin once said that all of his inventions, the glass harmonica gave him the most satisfaction out of them all. He also invented a mechanical arm for reaching books on tall shelving, a library chair whose seat folded up into a stepping stool, and also a street lamp design that didn't get smoky and didn't require daily cleaning. And he also invented a three-wheel clock that used two pinions and kept excellent time. And here is the detail that makes all of this even more remarkable. Franklin never patented any of his inventions, not one. He believed fundamentally that ideas existed to be freely shared, and that if he benefited from the work of those who came before him, the least he could do was to give his own work back to the world. Now we have to talk about the electrical experiments. Franklin is more famously known for his work with electricity than anything. By the mid 1700s, electricity was genuinely a mystery at the time. Scientists understood that it knew that it generated a static charge and you could feel it, but they didn't know what it really was and how it worked. So Franklin became fascinated by this after he accidentally shocked himself in 1746 while performing a simple experiment. Rather than being deterred from it, he dug deeper. He is the man who gave us the terms battery, conductor, electrician. He was the first to demonstrate that electricity has a positive and negative charge. He developed the theory of conservation of charge, and he developed one of the most important safety devices in human history at that time, the lightning rod. His idea was elegant. Iron rods mounted on rooftops of buildings connected by a brass wire running all the way down to the dirt. If lightning struck, the electrical charge would travel harmlessly down the wire into the ground, bypassing the building entirely. By 1753, he was explaining the design within the Poor Richard's Almanac, and lightning rods began appearing all over Philadelphia. But before the lightning rod came, the experiment that made him the most famous was the kite and electricity, and that happened in June 1752. Franklin was waiting, and eventually the sky darkened and a thunderstorm came. For months, he was developing a hypothesis that lightning was not a supernatural event, not the wrath of heaven, but a massive electrical discharge, the same phenomena that he had been creating in his lab. He wanted to prove it. His original plan had been to erect a tall iron rod on top of a Philadelphia church and wait for the storm to charge it. But the church was not finished yet, so Franklin had to improvise. He built a simple kite from two crossed sticks and a large silk handkerchief. He attached a sharp wire to the top of the kite. He tied a long hemp string from the kite down to a metal house key, and below the key a dry silk string, because it would not conduct electricity, keeping it safely in his hand. He also had the Leyden jar, a ready device that would capture and store electrical charge. His son, William, who was 22 at the time, went with him to the field outside the city. The two of them stood under a small shed at the edge of the field, and historians believe that this was to keep the silk portion of the string dry and to put the kite in the air. So as the kite was in the air, they waited, and the kite flew. The storm churned overhead, and for a while nothing really happened. But then Franklin noticed something different. The loose fibers on the hemp string were beginning to stand upright, exactly the way the fibers behaved near a charged object in his laboratory experiments. And he brought his knuckle near the metal key, and all of a sudden a spark jumped. Franklin did not get struck by lightning. This is a myth. If he did, it could have killed him. What actually happened was quieter and more profound. The damp hemp string was conducting atmospheric electricity from the charged storm clouds down through the key and into the Leyden jar. Franklin was collecting ambient electrical charge, the same electrical nature of lightning, but just without the lethal bolt. He had this proof. Lightning was electricity. He wrote it up in a letter to his friend Peter in October 1752, published it in the Pennsylvania Gazette, read before the Royal Society of London. The scientific community on both sides of the Atlantic were electrified in every sense of the word. Of course, Franklin being Franklin, he couldn't approach even electricity without, doing something oddly interesting. There was a picnic incident in 1748 while preparing to electrocute a turkey for a dinner party, which he successfully had done before. He accidentally electrocuted himself, knocking himself unconscious. When he came to, he wrote to his brother about the experience and noted that he couldn't believe that, and it took a hit on his ego. There was the air bath habit that Benjamin Franklin also had. He believed firmly in health benefits of fresh air, and every morning for most of his adult life, he spent 30 minutes to an hour sitting naked in front of the open window. He called it an air bath. He was convinced it kept him healthy, and his contemporaries were understandably baffled by it. And then there was the letter. In 1781, while serving as the American ambassador to France, Benjamin Franklin composed a formal satirical essay addressed to the Royal Academy of Sciences, in which he proposed, with a full mock of seriousness, that scientists should dedicate themselves to developing a medicine that would make natural discharge of the bodily gas more pleasant. The letter was real. It was titled, among other things, Fart Proudly. He sent it to friends and to a philosopher, Richard Price, and it was clearly written his great amusement. This is the same man who helped negotiate the Treaty of Paris, who sat at the Constitutional Convention, and whose face is on the $100 bill. Benjamin Franklin died in 1790 at the age of 84. 20,000 people attended his funeral in Philadelphia at the same time. This was one of the largest public gatherings at that time in human history. He had started life as a son of a candle maker, skipped almost all formal education, and taught himself everything through borrowed books and relentless curiosity. He retired wealthy at 42 and then spent the next 4 decades inventing, experimenting, writing, and serving public life. He never patented a single invention. He gave every idea away. He coined the word electrician. He proved lightning was electricity. He invented the lightning rod, the bifocal, the glass Armonica, the flexible catheter, the Franklin stove, the swim fin, the library stepping stool, and many other things. He organized America's first volunteer fire company. He helped start what became the University of Pennsylvania. Benjamin Franklin served as the first postmaster general. He was also inducted into the International Swimming Hall of Fame. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, he electrocuted himself trying to cook a turkey and wrote an academic paper about the importance of farting. That is Benjamin Franklin, not the icon on the $100 bill, the actual man with his endless curiosity and his absurd, profound, generosity with his ideas. Until next time, see you in the next video.